the idea behind the presentation. I'll start with just a little bit of background, though Hiranmay gave my background. I would quickly kind of give you the context of where we come from in terms of SkyQuest, very quickly, probably a minute or so on that, and then jump into the main aspects of, how do we look at innovation, as the topic is idea to commercialization. So in academia and in almost my 1.5 decades of working with several brilliant researchers, academicians, startups, academic as well as the start and researchers on the private sector as well, I've realized that the most important thing is not just be fixated with the idea, but be able to kind of step out of that role and see how will it be implemented. So the commercialization, to my mind, is actually putting the idea into action, which would basically be able to create the value in terms of course, in some sense monetary, but more importantly, create a positive impact, on the intended use of the idea, and thereby contribute economically, ecologically, as well as socially. So with that background, I will share my screen and start with the presentation. Please let me know if the screen is visible to all of you.
It's visible.
Okay, great.
Yeah, it's visible. Am I visible?
Not yet, sir.
No, sir. Sorry. I think we are able to hear you only.
Okay.
Okay, so SkyQuest, like I said very quickly, we were founded in 2006. We started, with our background, with the idea or the intent of seeing how we can bring out good innovative technologies from the academia, bring it to the industry, and basically create value in the between, so that whatever value addition is needed from going from one technology readiness level to the one which will actually make sense for the industry and bridge that gap. Since we started then, we initiated in India, we worked on early on with CSIR, NRDC, and some of these organizations, probably 2006 to 2008. And that's when we got several opportunities, to work with government of Israel, United Nations on developing one of the most extensive 40-member country network of technology exchange called South-South Global Assets and Technology Exchange, which operated in 40 plus countries funded by UNDP, where the idea was to bring in innovation from developing countries, mostly before India had the product patent regime, which I'm sure a lot of you will be familiar with. In 2006 is when that kind of got into force. Prior to that, it was only process patents which were being filed. So when we were looking at the post-product patent regime era, the earlier angle, and even today more so, is what we call the north-south transfer of technology, which would mean that the universities or researchers or companies from the so-called Western countries would typically like to transfer their technologies to developing and emerging countries. So the SS Gate initiative of the UN was primarily a path-breaking initiative to see how technologies from developing countries or least developed countries can be utilized and can be commercialized in other developing or least developed countries. And so that was the word South-South. In the UN parlance, South means developing or least developed. And so South-South transfer. And it was then we also added the triangulation of South-South-North, in terms of the transfer mechanisms and transfer of technology. We also got very early on the opportunity to shape the Research to Rupees program for Government of Gujarat, and also work on with Government of Thailand on Research to Bharat, and similarly in China as well. We worked on several initiatives, and we're also proud of the fact that we were along on a DST funded project. We did the first IP auction in the country for life sciences, and followed by significant technology roadshows where the technologies were transferred from academia to industry, and also from startups to larger companies across various countries. So without going into many details, today we span, we have almost 14 plus years of experience, operate across 65 countries, and close to 200 plus team members worldwide. I am going to skip my introduction because Hiranmay has done more than justice to the same. So okay, coming on to our objectives. So I would start with the first things first. Everything begins with an idea, right? So in terms of what is, as an inventor, or as a researcher, the first thing which comes to you, or even if you are a startup entrepreneur and you start working on an idea, the first thing which comes to you is, the key research or the key idea on which you want to work in. So I want to start with something which is very basic, which if some of you who have attended the workshops which has been conducted by GSBTM or Bhuj Coast where I have taken sessions, I have emphasized this earlier as well, that one of the most important asset for any inventor or anyone with an inventive mindset is how he does the record keeping of his ideas. Okay, and as the first step towards doing anything meaningful. Sorry, that's my daughter in the background. You can stand up. So okay, so I think what is very important to understand is that any idea which is captured, and if it is not captured with the right accuracy and the accuracy of information in terms of when it was invented, how it was invented, it can be a big issue in proving the provenance of the idea or whether you were the original inventors. Just to give you a very quick idea on the few historic missed opportunities because of bad record keeping, is this one French astronomer, Le Monnier, who made such crappy notes that he was originally who discovered the planet Uranus, but because of his poor record keeping, the credit for the same was actually given to Herschel, who had much better record keeping, and much later he cited Uranus, and kind of discovery of a planet is not something which happens very often, right? So similarly, another person, Gordon Gould, who had many ideas scribbled onto his notebook regarding production and use of lasers, and because of his lack of care, for choice, lack of better words, he forgot his book, the research notebook, at a candy store, and he had to have a huge series of protected battles of legal proceedings to actually get the credit which he deserved towards inventions of laser. Anyways, and now we look at the bright side. The good researchers or scientists which humanities we have seen, right from the likes of Leonardo da Vinci. As you can see, a snapshot in the slide of Leonardo da Vinci's book. Similarly, the cutouts, the famous Vitruvian Man. These are just an examples of some really brilliant researchers, but does not mean that they were the only ones who were brilliant. They were the ones who were brilliant and also meticulous, which is very, very important for success, like in other businesses, also in bringing research and having giving the legitimacy to research which is needed. So if you see, there are notes and scribbles on these pages. You can recreate the experiments from scratch because of the accuracy of record keeping. Here, it's a very interesting experiment. Before I move on to the next topic, which I would like to mention, this is from Alexander Graham Bell's notebook. This is, I would love to have this more interactive, but I believe, so my question to you would be, does anyone know who is Alexander Graham Bell? Well, he was the one who is credited to invent, to have started Bell Labs, which today, as we know, is one of the largest telecommunication companies of the world, AT&T, right? Now, it is his notebook. This was about the invention which we had regarding the radio transmission in Boston in his university. So Mr. Watson essentially was a registrar. So he even mentioned this line on March 10th, 1876, because he had made a note without any scribbles or cancellations. It was this line because there was another professor in another university in Boston itself on similar days who went to the patent office and filed for a patent. But Mr. Graham Bell got the right because he had actually one day prior or few days prior had also mentioned and called he logged that he had called the administrator of the university that he had found this invention. That which was recorded by himself helped him, and now we don't even care who the second guy was. You see the difference of good record keeping and meticulousness. So these are some of the very basic hygiene rules needed for anyone running a startup, technology, research in a lab or whatever setting, even if you're a PhD scholar or you're a BTech, MTech, whatever good ideas you're working on, it's extremely essential. This is the first step to having any possible success, which is defensible in today's globalized and competitive landscape. Okay, so I'll skip the others. These are just to give you a sense. So why is this important? That this is essentially to prove, because we are all talking about IP and proving the ownership of IP, it is important, like the first incident report which happens in the police registrations, we have the first invention reports, right? In terms of who filed, what was the, not filed, I'm sorry, what was the origin of invention. This good documentation would help us essentially to prevent, in case of there is interference, there is any case of IP theft, any case of confusion over inventorship, any anecdotal references needed, also supporting tax deductions or avoiding ownership disputes. So of course, I'm not going to go into the debate of protecting in terms of the IP publication versus protecting. I'm sure there are enough topics and webinars we've done on the importance of when to do a invention disclosure, when to do a public disclosure of a certain invention before publication, before IP filing. So that I'm not going to touch. Assuming that what we have as an idea is protectable and defensible and is something which is novel, we basically we have to look at now from the perspective of whether our technology or our idea is investment grade, in the sense it will offer the protection which is needed. It will offer the protection which is needed in business in order to commercialize or have a sustainable edge, right? So the comparative on the patentability, I'm going to again skip the patentability part. Now we go to whether, assuming, so let us understand that a very hard fact is that globally only 2.1% of patents which are filed have actually been commercialized, are being commercialized, right? So having a patent does not ensure that it is commercializable or it is defensible or it can be commercialized. So that is when the layer of how the commercialization aspect comes in. So protecting your intellectual property, whether it is through a registered process, which is patenting trademarks, patenting through trademarks, through utility design, through copyright. Apart from it, you can also have things as proprietary technology or a black box or a know-how. So all of that aside, what is important is what you have. Is that special enough, and would it stand the scrutiny of the market and the competition? So from that perspective is when I would like to indulge a bit in the process per se of the evaluation. Okay. So first, as we all know, it starts with a concept. Then we basically deal with whosoever is like we have the IP hub, and we have the patent cells in various colleges, universities, or decentralized places or organizations like NRDC or even our organization. We work with inventors to ensure that there is the concept, then there is a non-disclosure which happens so that there is no leakage of information. Then you have the invention disclosure which happens, and then you can have the expression of interest. Then you basically propagate the information regarding what is the invention about, what is the idea about, and then you could solicit expression of interest from potential users, and you could basically work with prospective licensees. And life is obviously not as simple as this flow diagram, but then you have a signed deal. This is like a broad linear approach. So let's look at now from a licensor's perspective. Let's say if you are you are the inventor, or you are the one who's creating a technology, be it a startup, academic, just a researcher, a student. What is the perspective? Okay, so when you look at why is the evaluation part important. So there are few things which we have to look at, and these are some of them. So please understand, in the whole technology commercialization, like as in business or as in most things in life, common sense is the most important skill, strength, whatever you call it. So you have to approach it rationally. So if you have a new invention, you got to basically simply say, okay, my idea essentially, is it strong enough? What is the technology differentiation? What is the market potential, and how commercially will it stand? So these are the broad buckets, as you see here. These are, I'm sorry, I'm trying to. So like these are the broad buckets, right? And then you look at basically you break it down further in terms of what is the overall market size, what could be the real uniqueness vis-a-vis what we have today. What would be the way I can bring a certain solution to market? What would be the challenges in terms of what is the confidence level in technologies? What could potentially be the liability? So if I can take an example of let's say in today, in the times of COVID, our country is facing one of the massive challenges in terms of the safety of the healthcare workers themselves. So as an example, for the safety of the healthcare worker, we have so every doctor or the frontline workers have to wear something called as a personal protection equipment, right? So there have been several challenges going on from Government of India, from various trusts or universities as well, to come up with a solution, a low cost. Like very recently, IIT Kanpur came up with a pipes kit, which is 100 rupees ke andar. They can make personal protection equipment made out of plastic. So, for example, if you were to come up with something which is, but one of the biggest challenges you face, as we work closely with healthcare workers as well, is that because this is plastic, imagine yourself wrapping yourself in a plastic and working on the field in the heat of summer and working on such critical issues of, in the heat, managing such high critical patient environment, which could be, almost a lethal environment. So how do you bring, how do you manage the issues of whether the product which I'm going to come up with or which I have, what is going to be the usability in terms of what all problems it is going to solve. Overall, we know that yes, for developing a personal protection equipment, it is a massive market size today, because as many number of doctors or healthcare workers today in the country and probably globally, they all need. So COVID is going to change the way, for example, we look at healthcare and interact with healthcare practitioners, right? Earlier, we used to meet our doctors suited, booted in ties and everything. Probably for at least next foreseeable future, they are not. Of course, they are free to wear their ties and smart shirts and suits, but it is going to be all under either a plastic barrier or a private, a personal protection equipment, right? So it's going to change the way we interact. So there is going to be this massive need. Is overall it's there. Now, how do you create a unique selling proposition? So I articulated a problem from a healthcare worker perspective, that they perspire. There is no air exchange, but you cannot have air exchange because then the viruses can also pass through. So how do you basically bring in so-called breathability or wearability along with maintaining the safety parameters, which kind of brings out to the issue of liability issues? That if your product, if a healthcare worker wears and is contracting the disease despite all the protective equipment, then there is a liability issue coming up. So I just wanted to kind of broadly highlight various levels of, as an inventor, you have to think in different terms. And of course, in the end, if you're looking at a commercial outcome of this, you have to think of the financial returns and also see what others are doing, other researchers are doing, or companies are doing. So with that, I think very simple questions to ask is it likely to sell? And and the general rule is, if it generally takes more effort to commercialize a technology that has only modest set of ingredients, then it does for. So basically, does it take longer time to market? Is the fundraising going to be more difficult because it's too much of concept selling? Is the return smaller or high risks? So these are the commercial assessment which anyone who's going to put money with you, even the grant agencies, the Fundaful grant and fund programs, which today Government of Gujarat and Government of India runs, as well as the the venture ecosystem, or the not-for-profit organizations which fund innovative programs and researches, they all have to think with this lens. So we as inventors also have to put this lens on. So we have to basically manage the potential value and the perceived risk in order to have the balance and kind of progress towards the commercial outcome. So here again, I'm going to skip a couple of slides. I mean, this is just some few bad technology predictions. Okay, now, so this is I think this is like a very, it's from a book called Patent It Yourself book, which is the page number 499 of that. It's a very interesting, very linear, but still something which always helps. And I've seen, so if you look at any product, for example, again, sticking with the personal protection equipment, or let's say a COVID testing kit, just because right now it is fresh on top of mind, you can look at, okay, what is various parameters you put up for your own invention, or for your, let's say you were to prioritize between 3 or 4 of your ideas. You can actually have this 62 kind of a checklist. Not everything will apply for a product, but you can give your own scores with your own levels of ignorance or awareness. And also additionally, you can do then some bit of market research and identify, and then do scoring again. So this essentially will give you a, kind of an average total score out of 100, will basically give you a sense of where do you stand, whether it makes sense in terms of positive. Are you in the positive or are you in the negative? So with this evaluation bit, you kind of look at, and like I said, the evaluation is at the IP level in terms of the technology, the novelty, the market analysis, whether who else, what all people are doing, and the commercial in terms of what all we can look at in terms of the cost advantage of your technology versus others, etc. So this again is a attribute checklist, which you can look at whether when you are evaluating an idea, whether it makes sense. This, I think, Hiranmaya, is also very interesting to look at when we look at from an ecosystem perspective, where to invest our resources and support some ideas versus others. This is, of course, for an individual inventor's prioritization, and also as a systemic approach of how do we prioritize and how do we kind of choose a technology. Let's say if you were to choose a 5G versus VoLTE and 3G as a country, what would be the pros and cons from that macro level implementation to a very specific narrow funding, or applying for fund, or choosing which research PhD topic to pursue. So this is basically something, a metric which you can expand to a macro level or bring it to a very small kind of a PhD thesis sort of a level as well. These are all self-assessments. So of course, 80% of the times I love to believe, and I hope I'm right, that we are honest, right? And when we are at least trying to do this over and over with us and with a certain, stakeholders, the honesty prevails. And of course, there could be mistakes, there could be blind spots, but at least 80% of the cases, this would work. And like I said, it all starts with common sense, and then you break it down rationally. So, okay, then it brings me to the product attribute checklist. So first you look at the high level of whether the area I'm working in, the technology segment I'm working in, makes sense. Then you go to the specifics of the invention, how good or bad it is. Again, here you break it down into whether the parameters, the operational simplicity of the invention, the product, the solution, the software, what it is, and you score it of your technology versus what is available in the market based on your understanding, or you take an expert opinion or guidance or a company help or iHub's help, right? Similarly, you look at durability, energy consumption, or whatever is relevant, energy or water consumption or resource consumption efficiency, etc. End of life use, upgradability, disposal parameters, and then you look at a high, medium, low index between your technology versus the others. So this is on the product attribution side. It's very, it's a simple arithmetic, and it just gives you a better sense in terms of quantification, because a lot of times in evaluating, apart from, because we are all talking about innovative technologies, innovative ideas, new ideas, you don't have exactly a comparative template. So this is where you kind of put some objectivity into a lot of subjectivity which exists in evaluating new ideas versus the old, right? So this is where based on yourself, and like I said, this is a licensor's perspective. So as an inventor or technology owner's perspective. So like you do basically a score, and then kind of it's a self score, like you have, in HR, like we have for scoring of employees, self-assessment, a 360-degree assessment. This is an inventor or a technology owner's self-assessment. So I'm not going to go into examples, because I would love to do a Q&A and give more time to Q&A, so that specific questions can be answered, which Hiranmay will coordinate as soon as I finish my presentation in next 10 minutes. So I want to quickly jump to now, these are some of the mapping tools, which are like the invention and patent management system, which can be again implemented at a institute level, at a lab level, or at a state level. Like we work very closely with the Boston University systems in Korea, Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology, Taiwan, E3, which has for last 15 years filing 5 patents a day, rather granted 5 patents a day. So we kind of help maintain these dashboards, which gives a visibility of what sort of inventions are there out there, what sort of competitive landscape exists for the ecosystem level, from the lab level, from a subject level. So these are more of tools which can be used, which this is something which SkyQuest has developed, and we kind of work with both from a financial tracking to, meeting objectives. As more and more patent is filed at an inventor level or at an institutional level, we also need to see whether we are not missing the dates to renew or file the maintenance fees and whatnot. So because it then become a lot of administrative hassle. So that is taken off to these systems. It also helps with better scouting and searching. And this, as an ecosystem, we can provide the support to technology buyers or large companies or industries who are looking for solutions, because more and more, almost 40% of the products launched in last 1 decade by the large companies have been in-licensed. So they have not been invented despite their billions of dollars of internal research. And this is a global number.
What fraction you told, Akash? What fraction you told?
40%.
40% are not developed by them.
No. So that is where the whole open innovation framework comes in. To give you an example, there is an organization in Singapore which was created by a lot of, we were involved also very closely in the initial days with what is called IPI, Intellectual Property Intermediary, set up by the government of Singapore to actually liaise and provide these services of searching and scouting of academic technologies to anyone from anywhere in the globe who needs a Singaporean technology. So they have these technology platforms implemented, and that is something which we've developed in-house as well in SkyQuest. But these are the resources which are extremely helpful and helps in visualizing the intellectual output of the ecosystem, in a very simple ways, and can be segregated. So anyways, this and also for kind of evaluating what to fund, how much to contribute, how much to allocate to a certain project versus another. So that's another basically assessment tool. So now bringing on to how do you look at, so now that we know we have a good idea, we've looked at that, the evaluation of it, we have something worthwhile pursuing. So how do you look at really bringing it out to the market in terms of, so there are several tools, right? There are a couple of tools which basically, if this would have been, I mean, of course it's a live session, but it would have been a one-to-one session, I would have asked, the difference, what are the various ways in which we can commercialize or monetize the ideas. So one of them, of course, is to sell it outright, that, okay, I'm a researcher and this is what I do, and I do not have the wherewithal or the capabilities to develop further. Then I would rather sell it to someone who can actually develop it further or use it. So that's a sale. Whereas when we use the word licensing, by definition, licensing is not the transfer of ownership. It is basically an equivalent of I have a property which I am giving for rent to someone who can make better use of it so that I get the rental income, right? And they would do the development of the property. So, and equivalent of that is licensing. So now, of course, there are pros and cons to everything. So when you license out, depending on the stage, when you are at an early stage, because the technology is not developed per se, the value which you will be able to realize from it will, of course, naturally be lower. Versus if you have already developed a product and you are selling it, then it's a different ball game altogether, and we'll get into that as well. So okay, but what is the advantage, of licensing as a strategy for early stage technology, especially in our ecosystems of early stage technology where we are developing with limited resources? Sometimes it makes sense to adopt a licensing strategy, but then when we are at an early stage, it is obviously more difficult as a researcher to raise funds, because we see the vision, we see probably the promise, but there is also kind of pitfalls to what could go wrong, in the whole development value chain. So from that perspective, but from a company's perspective, it also lies, it's kind of a conservative approach, whether you would invest yourself, instead you license in something at a certain stage. So you kind of, the whole idea behind licensing is, more often than not, why do large industries, which I mentioned, 40% of them, their successful product launches are in licensed, or which are taken in from smaller organizations or from academia, is because it is not just the resources. They have enough resources. MNCs have enough resources to put forward, invest themselves. But it is also the time required to reinvent the whole thing, right? And time, as we all know, is money. And launching it at the right time in a certain market can be the difference between success and failure. So from that perspective, it kind of shortens the time to market when you are licensing. From an in-licenser's perspective, who is an in-licenser? Now, so as a researcher, let's say if you were to be, how would I say, we are from academia, and we are licensing it to, so we could consider, the pros and cons of licensing it to big companies. So one would have fascination with, I have licensed it to, just for taking names as an example, let's say Zydus Cadila or Pfizer in life science, or it is, I'm able to license it to GE, one of my technologies, versus I choose to license it to a small and medium enterprise or a startup. What are the advantages? So when you look at, as a licensor or as a technology innovator, when you are talking to an established company, what is the advantage? That they have already established marketing, manufacturing, production functions, right? So if they like it, they can bring your product to market much faster. They have the access to capital. They have better resources to protect and enforce the intellectual property. But the flip side is that if there is a defensive acquisition, which would mean that it is one amongst their thousands of products and there is not a champion attached to it, then your technology just be licensed and taken in. So you may get, probably in most license fees, unless you have negotiated an upfront fee, it will mostly be on royalty basis, and there is no royalty income if there is no sale. And if it is orphaned or you lose, then the opportunity is lost. On the other hand, in case of smaller or newer companies, which could be startups or SMEs, which is the majority of licenses which is happening is to startups and SMEs, is basically they can serve specialized hands-on market. They have the agility, they have the advantage of being focused on the specific problem area and what your innovation is solving and how it is addressing the market. They are organizationally flexible. It is much more pleasant to work with them. On the flip side, for example, it may lead to a long-term relationship. You may also get equity into a structure. As an inventor, you may end up getting equity, and provided if you get successful, then there is a windfall return possibility. But the flip side is that startups are subject to quick closure, buyouts, organizational changes, or just complete dropping out. So these are the pros and cons to keep in mind, because there is no black and white answer to this. We have to evaluate based on the merit of every case and what options do we have. So this is the numbers which I've taken from LESI, the Licensing Executive Societies International. It's an international body. So now, so I think we are just approaching the timeline. So now, from an innovator's perspective, when we are looking at licensing, what are the implications for the decisions you take, right? So here what I've highlighted is, let's say if you were to do a licensing or a sale to third-party company as a researcher, it gives you a hands-off approach, in terms of you can continue to focus on your R&D, and the commercial organization can continue to monetize that, and you get the fair share of that return subject to the negotiation which you've had. So from a risk perspective, it is much lesser risk. Personal as well as financial exposure is extremely limited. On the flip side, it has less opportunity for return. And also you have to lose the control of your invention, your baby, depending on how open or willing and what is really should be done for the success of the idea. So it obviously is also detachment from the ego identity, which, one may, so to give you an example, one of very dear friend of mine, I would not like to take names, in Israel, he has built a fortune on companies, startups, especially who are based on fantastic technologies, but the co-founders split because of interpersonal issues, and the companies went under. They went for bankruptcy. So the technology was lying there. So he acts as a scavenger, takes the IP minus the person, right, and is able to create the value. So what I'm trying to highlight here is that a lot of times in startups or in companies, because everything is personal in the end. So if there are interpersonal conflicts, the ego identity and the challenges related to personal, how we would manage this whole equation plays also a very important role. And it's nothing to do with technology, nothing to do with the science, but it's purely to do with human interactions, right? So that's one part. Then the other thing, if you look at, if you participate as an inventor, you either yourself spin it out, so you become an entrepreneur or a technopreneur, or you become a partner in someone who comes in together with your co-founder and spin off the venture or have a new venture. What is the implication for you as an inventor? Is basically it demands a career shift. It is very different from how you write for grants, you write for research applications, you get your salaries as a researcher or as a lecturer, professor, or your fellowships. But on the other hand, you have to now manage your own balance sheet. You have to work with, of course, there is the maximum potential for gain, and so is the risk and the opportunity. But the biggest upside is you have the opportunity to stay with the invention throughout its life cycle, and of course, continue to innovate while based on the availability of resources and your intent. However, when you look at the spin-off formations, it is mostly not done for singular technologies. It is ideally for when the technology is more like a platform. When you have, let's say, I'll give you an example of a technology which we were involved in, which was basically a technology to develop super absorbent polymers, which was based on totally green process. Now, as you would all know, super absorbent polymers, which are basically, those granules, if you've seen, which are there in the diapers or sanitary napkins, but they have amazing applications in agriculture as hydrogels, which would basically absorb water and slowly release to the soil, thereby addressing the water scarcity. Or they would also be looking at, in case of disasters. For example, when Hurricane Sandy happened in New York, they used what was called, instead of sandbags, which is used to make embankments, they use sap bags, the super absorbent polymer bags, so that pani gaya, it's very easy to transport. Water goes in, it swells and takes almost 200 times the volume and weight of water and actually creates the embankment. So it has this use, it has used in insulation. So it was a technology which was a production technology, but had multiple patents, but more importantly, had applications in multiple areas. So that the decision was taken on the inventor side that we would spin it off as a platform, and the technology was licensed into the spin-off. And then individual, for let's say, one of the applications of this, which we had further licensed to a US company, which got funded almost $7 million to take this pill because it was biosafe. You take a pill, you consume, you have a glass of water, it swells in your stomach, and you get a false feeling of satiety because it swells. And the investment, this was the first technology application which was licensed because it is a $32 billion market for losing weight in the United States. So you take the pill, you take water, it swells in your stomach, gives you a false feeling of that the stomach pet bhar gaya, and you would not eat. So this application itself brought in $7 million in licensing revenue for the technology. And then further research on agriculture and personal hygiene side was done. So I'm just trying to give you a sense of that for spin-offs, as an inventor, if you have technology which has multiple applications, then that is where you could consider spin-off formations instead of just simply licensing. Then, of course, there are certain considerations which are there, that whether you would do this license just to one party. So if you would have recently learned, saw that there was as the COVID increases, there is more and more need for testing kits in India, right? So very recently, the ICMR, Indian Council of Medical Research, they licensed to the Ahmedabad-based company called Zydus Cadila a technology to develop these rapid test kits. Similarly, IIT Delhi to develop a PCR to a company called Bangalore Genie, so that the target price achieved is 500 rupees per test, which is one of the cheapest today possible, globally. So for all of this, when the academia or even as an inventor, when you license out, what would you consider? So both of these examples were non-exclusive licensing because so there are pros and cons. So as a licensor, what is the advantage of non-exclusive licensing? Because it gives you more opportunity for, if you license it to 3 or 4 people or more, you would have a better chance of success, right? Because if, let's say, one organization is not able to achieve the full potential. However, if you're able to, if you're doing an exclusive one, then, sorry, on the other side of non-exclusive licenses, if there are 3 or 4 organizations involved, they would want to ensure that the opportunity is large enough that if each of them, invest early on in developing the market and, investing in commercializing it, it should give them adequate returns. Otherwise, no one will have any incentive to develop this market. Now, when the technology was licensed to Zydus Cadila, as an example, the consideration, at least what is available in the public sphere, was that they had the adequate capacity to scale up very fast. And of course, it is again a non-exclusive license, but they can do it very rapidly, and they can do it to scale and bring it to the price which is enough, which is in the affordable range as is expected by the government. So that's an example which is of a non-exclusive license, but it made sense for the commercial organizations to accept the non-exclusive license because the market itself is massive right now, right? So yeah, these are the basic considerations. I'm not going into the technicality of sub-licensing and others. There is also one thing as inventors we will have to keep in mind, that when you invent a certain, so today on 17th of May 2020, I have an idea which is at stage A. Now that can go tomorrow or in next 6 months, I can develop the technology further. But let's say today I license out, right? And someone works on it and comes up with a better idea, or you continue to work on it and you come up with a better version of it. So who controls, the, what is called the sub-licensing parameters of new technologies coming in, or sorry, kind of continuity or access to these licenses. Sub-licenses would be essentially, let's say, the same example of Zydus Cadila, further licensing it out to another company to make it. Whether that is allowed or not has to be decided in the first place. So with that, I think I come to the elephant in the room in terms of how do you decide at what value do you transfer these technologies or you work with on the commercial side. This itself is both a science and art, and it warrants not just a webinar but a course on it. But just as inventors, we need to look at, like, I come back to my original maxim of everything is common sense. So basically, we need to understand when you create, you give a valuation to your invention. We have to be reasonable. And how do you measure reasonability? Is in terms of what kind of income can it generate with reasonable assumption. It is all about assumptions. Second, in terms of market comparisons. So what sort of prices is being paid to other comparative inventions in your country, wherever in the world, or whatever comparables exist. And the third, what cost has gone into actually developing it. So it has to be higher than the cost between the market potential which is being there, and that is how the reasonability is defined. Of course, I am, in the interest of time, I'm just giving you a very broad kind of a framework to think, because this is something which is also done with certain level of expertise it requires. But as inventors, there is no one best to give this judgment, but you have to do this dispassionately, like Lord Krishna said in Bhagavad Gita. You have to show detached involvement. So you cannot wear the same, rose-tinted glasses that this is the best invention in the world and this is going to change the world. Of course, it would if you do it right, but then you have to think from the perspective of a licensee, one who is taking in what all risks are there, what all challenges are there, how much investment is needed, not what just you have put in, how much will it be needed. So when you put those lenses, you get detached from your own process of building up the cost and the grants or investments you made, and you can then look at the real commercialization aspect. So then comes the steps. The license agreements, some of the key things to keep in mind when you negotiate. Depending on the area, because we are a very broad audience, there is something called as the royalty audits or manuals, which are published by Licensing Executive Society, which is a global average range, which would say, like, say, in chemicals and materials, you have 7% royalty rate, whereas in software you have probably 11%. I'm just right now giving average numbers. It keeps on changing. Some years the deals are different, so the average changes. But those are the ones. So royalty is one of the most effective way of monetizing your invention when you licensing it out, when you're commercializing it out, apart from getting the equity returns if you are participating in the spin-off itself. But having said that, royalty also is something which, this is as per the 2018 report, compliance report on royalty, that 86% of licensees, this is not for India, this is globally, they underreport royalties, which means even if they're selling, let's say 100,000 worth of units, they would probably report, a lesser number so that they have to pay less royalty. Now, this is further split into, so the meat of the matter here is, the key part is that when you are drafting the licensing agreement, you don't have to leave any ambiguity or misinterpretation in terms of royalty rates, minimum clauses, in terms of performance clauses, in terms of what would be the deductions. A lot of industries or companies say that initially to spread the concept, we have to give what is called FOC, free of cost. So how do you account for reasonability of sample size, free samples? Because there they didn't make money. They would say, if we didn't make money, how can we pay you, right? So some of these aspects, how do you take care of these things? So as you break it down, splice this down, you have to take more interest in your own deal. No lawyer can do this for it. Of course, a smart lawyer or a smart organization or a good ecosystem can help you. That is why we are doing this exercise, to highlight the common mistakes which we can avoid. So if we can keep this as a checklist, that any licensing deal we are doing, even when you're signing an investor agreement, you have to be sure, or if you're signing with a marketing partner, how would you basically look at these aspects? The other is to have a mechanism to monitor. You should have in your agreement the right to audit their books. If someone is taking your product, they would say, no, we are a private company, we cannot show you the book of accounts. And this is only one component. Yours is one patent out of 86 patents we are using for our product. How do we ascertain? So all of this has to be discussed beforehand, because if there is ambiguity and clearance, there will only lawyers can earn through that process, which is basically because of the legal disputes, and it will just harm the whole ecosystem because it brings more mistrust. So that is where the issue is not with the licensee. It is with the lack of oversight and the lack of interest we take as inventors in ensuring that we are taking all the steps backed by common sense and good hygiene, which starts with having good record keeping, and record keeping extends to having good pointers for agreement, good pointers for MOU or letter of understanding, and following it up. एक बार मैंने license कर दिया, do not take pride that I have licensed it to 10 people. The pride is how much impact you have created. You should have the visibility of how much sales which is happening, how much sales is possible, why it is not happening. You should have all the flexibility, and you have to exhibit the interest. If you do not show as an inventor that you are not interested in how much and what your invention, how it is impacting commercially, ecologically, socially, then you cannot expect to have a successful commercialization experience. So the take home to end this is basically, you should absolutely know what you have, assess your own IP importance, your own value, and how much value you can create. And with that, I will end my the primer on to commercialization. I think I hope I have not overshot the timeline. So Hiranmay, over to you. And
thank you, आकाश. मैं नागार्जुन साहब से कमेंट्स के लिए आऊंगा. उससे पहले कुछ इंटरेस्टिंग सवाल आए हैं इस बीच में फेसबुक और जूम में, और मैं चाहूंगा कि आप कुछ सवाल की जवाब ट्राई करें लेने के लिए. डॉक्टर जयदीप पटेल फेसबुक लाइव से पूछ रहे हैं, गवर्नमेंट टीचर हूँ, गवर्नमेंट में रहते रिसर्च भी किया है, तो गवर्नमेंट टीचर होते हुए रिसर्च को कमर्शियलाइजेशन करने के लिए नौकरी छोड़ना पड़ेगा क्या? लीगली क्या परमिसेबल है? नागार्जुन साहब भी हैं, तो दोनों के लिए सवाल है.
Right. I'll let first Nagarajan sir answer from the ecosystem and policy perspective, and then I'll have more on a practitioner view.
Okay.
Thank you. That was a very wonderful and informative session. बहुत जानने को मिला है. कभी-कभी मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि इसमें हम जितना भी सीखे, और लगता है कि और सीखने के लिए बाकी है. So I think उस तरीके से we had a very good informative session, and it was complementing to what we have done. अभी तक जितने भी हमने टॉपिक्स लिए हैं ना, उसका ये एक कॉम्प्लीमेंटिंग वे में था. और जो सवाल की बात है, आई थिंक जब हम एम्प्लॉयमेंट में आते हैं तो एक कॉन्ट्रैक्ट है, उसमें साइन करना पड़ता है. हम मान लेते हैं कि जो भी नियम है उसको हम पालन करेंगे. तो गवर्नमेंट ने ये बोला है कि रॉयल्टी इनकम के लिए आई थिंक कोई पाबंदी नहीं है, क्योंकि लोग बुक लिखते हैं या आर्ट वर्क है, इसमें कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है। कमर्शियल पे जब जाएगा तब प्रॉब्लम होगा। तो आई थिंक टेक्नोलॉजी को लाइसेंसिंग करके रॉयल्टी लेने में कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं होनी चाहिए। बट इफ इट इज हैविंग अ बिजनेस एंगल देन वी हैव टू डिसाइड एंड देन वी हैव टू डू इट। बट आई थिंक चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट कुछ अच्छा रास्ता बता सकते हैं जो लीगल भी हो और आपके लिए सही भी हो, बिकॉज आपकी मेहनत की फल को आप हमेशा कर सकते हैं। जैसे हमने देखा, इन्वेंशन तो एक पहले बेसिक स्टेप है, उसके बाद क्या हम करते हैं वो बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट है। और बहुत सारे जो डैशबोर्ड्स और डेटा और जो चीजें आगे की पोटेंशियलिटी को दिखा है, खास करके जो लास्ट में हमको जो क्लैरिटी रखना है अपने डीलिंग्स में और लीगलीज में, ये काफी इम्पोर्टेंट है। तो जितना एज अ एंटरप्रेन्योर एंड एज अ इनोवेटर हमको 360 डिग्री सभी चीजों को थोड़ा थोड़ा ध्यान में रखना है, और जहां पे भी जरूरत है वहां पे कोई स्पेशलिस्ट को कंसल्ट करना चाहिए, उसकी जो प्रैक्टिशनर्स हैं उनको कंसल्ट करना चाहिए। और मैं तो बोल सकता हूँ कि आकाश जी को हम कमर्शलाइजेशन में तो बिल्कुल कंसल्ट कर ही सकते हैं। ही इज देयर फॉर अस एंड ही विल सर्टेनली हेल्प अस आउट। बाकी का कुछ जो इकोसिस्टम पर्सपेक्टिव आई थिंक Bhavsar ji can share.
Right, sir, thank you so much for your kind words and also responding to that query as well. I would like to humbly submit, so school level pe Hiranmay please add, but in general, so the countries which like US and Israel, which I work very closely with, which we've seen there is a very landmark law in the US which actually changed the whole, which was referred to as Bayh-Dole Act, which basically allowed researchers, federally funded researchers, which would mean सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट या स्टेट गवर्नमेंट की फंडेड रिसर्च को आप कैसे कमर्शलाइज कर सकते हैं विदाउट लूजिंग देयर जॉब्स, विदाउट लूजिंग द बट so for that what was very important was to have clarity in terms of the IP policy. So every institution, so जिन साहब ने सवाल पूछा है उनकी स्कूल या उनकी कॉलेज में स्पेसिफिकली IP पॉलिसी होना बहुत जरूरी है, जो बेसिकली वो एक सीमा बांधेगा कि क्या आप कर रहे हैं स्कूल के दायरे के दरमियान, उनके रिसोर्सेज यूज करते हुए जस्टिफाइबली आप कुछ भी कम अप करते हैं तो उस पे स्कूल का हक बनता है या गवर्नमेंट का हक बनता है, विच इज बिकॉज यू आर यूजिंग द रिसोर्सेज ऑफ द एम्प्लॉयर. So, and this applies to even if you're in public or private sector, right? Now, additionally, if there is additional, which is IP, which is created beyond that resources, तो उसका कैसे यूज हो सकता है वो आपके एम्प्लॉयमेंट कॉन्ट्रैक्ट जैसे सर ने बताया उसके अधीन होता है. नाउ इन ऑर्डर टू प्रमोट इनोवेशन, बिकॉज आइडिया कोई बॉक्स में नहीं आती कि मुझे इतने बजे आइडिया आएगी, जब मैं काम पे होऊंगा, मैं लंच कर रहा हूँ, मैं लेक्चर ले रहा हूँ या मैं कोई मीटिंग में हूँ या बाथरूम में हूँ, आइडिया कैन स्ट्राइक यू एट एनी टाइम. लेकिन उसको लेजिटिमेटली कमर्शलाइज करने के लिए विदाउट लूजिंग योर जॉब, बिकॉज दैट इज व्हाट योर कोर क्वेश्चन इज, विल एसेंशियली डिपेंड अपॉन हमारे स्टेट की जो SSIP जो इनिशिएटिव है एक्चुअली, दैट एक्चुअली एनकरेजेस प्रोफेसर्स, रिसर्चर्स, टीचर्स to actually, I don't know if it covers the scope of teachers, school teachers, that I don't know. Hiranmay can add.
Yes, we cover.
Then sir, it is already answered that we already have a very proactive system जो आपको ये allow करेगी. लेकिन सर इसमें ये हमें as inventors ईमानदारी रखना बहुत जरूरी है कि हम जो बात कर रहे हैं वो truly it will, जैसे मैंने बताया, अपने खुद का self evaluation where this idea merits its own life in terms of whether वो किसी और को useful हो सकती है in terms of commercially, ecologically, socially. तो वो चाहे अगर आप उसे स्टार्टअप बनाना चाहें तो उसके तो बहुत अच्छे प्रावधान ऑलरेडी हैं. सबैटिकल पे जाके आपको बेसिकली आप उसे स्पिन ऑफ करके, मतलब स्टार्टअप पॉलिसी के अंडर आप अप्लाई कर सकते हैं. और अगर आप उसे सिर्फ लाइसेंस करना चाहें तो इट हैज नो रिस्ट्रिक्शंस एक्सेप्ट द फैक्ट कि आपकी जो लाइसेंसिंग आपकी इनकम होगी, जैसे कुछ यूनिवर्सिटीज में ऐसा होता है कि 25% इनकम यूनिवर्सिटी को जाएगी, 25% डिपार्टमेंट को जाएगी, 50% इन्वेंटर खुद को जाएगी जो प्रोफेसर है, रिसर्चर है. और कई में ऐसे होता है सिर्फ 25% विल गो टू द कोर इन्वेंटर, द रेस्ट विल गो टू द इंस्टीट्यूशन. दिस विल ऑल डिपेंड ऑन द इंस्टीट्यूशनल पॉलिसी. So apart from the government policy, all institutions also need to have this. And I think that is one of जो हिरणमय जी ने स्टार्टिंग में भी बोला कि ये एक हेतु ये है कि हर इंस्टीट्यूट में अगले आने वाले 2-3 सालों में हर इंस्टीट्यूट में अपना एक आईपी पॉलिसी और आईपी कमर्शियलाइजेशन का एक कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग होगा, which will only, so we will not have to wait till these webinars, but you can go to a certain person and get these things clarified. Right? I think this is what I could answer from my.
I will, with your permission, with Nagarajan sir and you, I'm not a domain expert, but I was part of the committee who drafted the IP policy of the Gujarat government. तो इसमें ऐसा है कि गुजरात की जो IP गाइडलाइन है ये काफी ब्रॉड है और इसमें हर एक जो स्टेक होल्डर है उसका रोल को हमने काफी ज्यादा नजर पे रखा है। और मैंने अभी जो लोग जूम पे हैं उनके लिए जूम पे और जो लोग फेसबुक लाइव पे है उनके लिए फेसबुक पे वो लिंक मैंने शेयर कर दिया है गुजरात गवर्नमेंट का आईपी गाइडलाइन फॉर ऑल यूनिवर्सिटीज। और उस गाइडलाइन पे आप जाएंगे तो एक सेक्शन 5.5 है जिसमें हम प्रॉफिट शेयरिंग और वो सब की बात कर रहे हैं। तो ये जो गाइडलाइन है ये गुजरात की ओवरऑल आईपी फ्रेमवर्क में लाइसेंसिंग और कमर्शियलाइजेशन की जो गाइडलाइन है उसमें क्लियर लिखा गया है। और हम कहीं नहीं देखते हैं कि फैकल्टी एक ही स्टूडेंट्स हैं, हम ये देखते हैं इनोवेटर कौन है, उसकी इन्वेंटर कौन है जो रिसर्च किया है। और उसकी बेसिस पे हमने एक बहुत सिंपल टर्मिनोलॉजी यूज किया है जो आकाश जी एग्री करेंगे। बहुत सारे यूनिवर्सिटी में एक टर्म यूज होता है कॉल्ड सिग्निफिकेंट यूसेज। सिग्निफिकेंट यूसेज का मतलब ये होता है आपने जब शोध किया तो आपके लिए कोई सिग्निफिकेंट रिसोर्सेज संस्था ने, यूनिवर्सिटी ने या सरकार ने आपको मुआवजा करवाया था या नहीं। फॉर द एग्जाम्पल सरल भाषा में कहूं तो अगर आपके स्टूडेंट्स कोई कॉलेज में पढ़ता है, क्योंकि कुछ स्टूडेंट्स भी यहाँ सवाल पूछ रहे हैं, और कॉलेज में वो डिग्री लेने के लिए जाता है, डिग्री लेने के लिए उसको भी आप वही क्लासरूम देते हो, वही लैब देते हो, वही टीचर देते हो जो सब बच्चों के लिए मिलता है। तो उसकी अगर आप ये कहो कि उस टीचर की सिखाने से वो सीखा और इसीलिए उसकी नॉलेज में मेरी हिस्सा है तो गलत बात है, क्योंकि वो सिग्निफिकेंट यूसेज की डेफिनेशन में नहीं आता है। सिग्निफिकेंट यूसेज की डेफिनेशन में ये आता है, मान लीजिए कोई बायोकेमिस्ट्री का रिसर्चर काम कर रहा है, उसके लिए आपने अलग से साइंटिस्ट जुगाड़ करी, उसको अलग से लैब फैसिलिटी बनाने में मदद किया, उसको अलग से स्पेशल सपोर्ट दी और वो कंट्रीब्यूशन भी सिग्निफिकेंट हो। तो जिस केस में सिग्निफिकेंट यूसेज का टर्म वैलिड होता है जो हमने पॉलिसी में लिखा है, उस केस में इंस्टीट्यूशंस की शेयर जो है अप टू 30% रहेगा। ऑल अदर केसेस में जहां सिग्निफिकेंट कंट्रीब्यूशन नहीं है उस केस में मेजॉरिटी शेयर जो फैकल्टी गाइड है, जो उसके साधन में काम किया है रिसर्च में, जो इन्वेंटर्स हैं जिन्होंने काम किया है, उनके हिस्सा में जाएगा। तो अगर आप उस बेनिफिट शेयरिंग में जाएंगे, हम जब ये पॉलिसी बना रहे थे तो अमेरिका, कनाडा और यूके सब यूनिवर्सिटी की बेस्ट प्रैक्टिस को देखे और ये पॉलिसी खुद प्रिंसिपल सेक्रेटरी मैडम ने ड्राफ्ट करी थी। तो हम लोगों ने ये पॉलिसी बनाया जो इनोवेटर की हित में हो। बहुत बार इंस्टीट्यूशन की पॉलिसी इंस्टीट्यूशंस की हित में होती है, कई बार टीचर की हित में होती है। गुजरात सरकार की जो पॉलिसी है ये इनोवेटर की हित को नजर पर रखते हुए बनाया गया है। तो अगर आप लोग उस पॉलिसी के अंदर जाएंगे, ये पेज नंबर 33 उस पॉलिसी में जो है उसमें डिटेल दिया गया है। तो वो डाउट नहीं है कि आपका इन्वेंशन को कमर्शियलाइजेशन करने के लिए आपको जॉब छोड़नी पड़ेगी। हम लोगों ने रिसेंटली जब फैकल्टी का रिक्वेस्ट आया था फैकल्टी को स्टार्टअप्स पे अलाउ करने के लिए, तो हम लोगों ने अलाउ किया है अगर आप इंडिपेंडेंट डायरेक्टर बनना चाहते हो, उस कंपनी की बोर्ड मेंबर बनना चाहते हो जो आपकी विद्यार्थियों ने बनाया, वो भी हम लोगों ने इसमें अलाउ किया है। हाँ, लेकिन अगर आप एग्जीक्यूटिव डायरेक्टर बनना चाहते हो आपको स्पेशल परमिशन चाहिए और वो डायरेक्टर ऑफ टेक्निकल एजुकेशन और डायरेक्टर ऑफ हायर एजुकेशन की पावर के अंदर वेस्टेड है। लुकिंग एट कंसिडरेशंस हम लोग उसको भी कर सकते हैं। तो ब्रॉडली कहा तो ये जो व्यवधान गुजरात गवर्नमेंट की डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ एजुकेशन ने बनाया है ये आपको बहुत कम जगह पे मिलेगा और हम लोगों ने ये सब फैक्टर का नजर पे रखते हुए सिस्टम्स को बनाया है। तो एक सवाल आकाश जी ये भी है कि जय सुदानी पूछ रहे हैं कि हम लोग इनोवेशन और आईपीआर बनाने में बिजी हैं, ये कमर्शियलाइजेशन तो बहुत कॉम्प्लेक्स गेम है, तो हमको कैसे पता चलेगा कि ये इनोवेशन आइडिया का वैल्यू क्या है, कोई सॉफ्टवेयर होता है, कैसा डाटाबेसेस होता है, कैसे पता करते हैं?
Okay, no, very good question actually. So इसमें like all good things in life, it's the answer is not binary. ऐसा कोई सॉफ्टवेयर नहीं है जो आपको वैल्यू बता देगा कि इसका ये वैल्यू है। पर एक चीज जो मैं आई डोंट थिंक आई एम्फसाइज्ड इट दैट अभी क्या होता है कि मैं अपने आप को ये बोल लूँ कि मैं रिसर्चर हूँ, मैं इन्वेंटर हूँ, but if I do not qualify in the definition of a problem solver, I do not consider that to be worthy of even pursuing commercialization. आपने अगर कोई problem solve नहीं किया है reasonably, not necessarily which is creating huge commercial returns. It could also create solve a social problem. It will solve a ecological problem. But in the end, if it creates that impact, वो impact आप as inventors, if that product is doing, you will be able to find value. Now, how do we approach this, right? क्योंकि ये सवाल अनफॉर्चुनेटली आप तब पूछते हैं जब आपने कोई इन्वेंशन कर दिया. ये सवाल हमें तब पूछना है कि हम ये क्यों परस्यू कर रहे हैं. It is just because my figment of imagination, because I had a dream of it. Did I validate? So did I follow a scientific process in ascertaining that what I am going to invest, the inexhaustible resource and the only resource which cannot come back in life, which is time, into coming up with something, is it worth? So, you don't need a software. You need a firmware which basically operates on the basis which says that, okay, am I solving a problem? And number two, if my idea, whatever right now, it can be hazy when you start and you continue to come up with the idea, but you have to constantly engage with the ones who are going to be the users. If you get the user feedback, you would know. Even let's say someone would say, मैं थोड़ी ना products बनाता हूँ, मैं तो chemical process बनाता हूँ, which goes probably my user, if it becomes successful, may be used by Make Money or BASF in some process. In a 100-step process, might be only one step. No, it doesn't matter. Today, we are in the era of LinkedIn, social networking and everything. You can always reach out to an industry expert and get the review that this is what I am trying to pursue, not disclosing your idea. But this is the problem, to validate a problem first. A lot of success in commercialization comes in the Western countries is not because they are the best solvers. They are basically the ones who are able to define and granulate the problem the best. They know exactly what they're going after. So then it's just a matter of chance and ingenuity that they come up with a solution, and it hits faster in the commercialization because उनको पता है वो कौन सा प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व कर रहे हैं, किस स्टेक होल्डर्स के लिए कर रहे हैं, कहाँ वो जाएगा. वो वैल्यू डेरिवेशन इज जस्ट अ बाय प्रोडक्ट ऑफ इट. सो टू सम इट अप, आई वुड से दैट इफ यू आर अ पीएचडी स्कॉलर और इफ यू आर अ रिसर्चर, आप जब अपना पहला ड्राफ्ट लिखते हैं अपना हाइपोथेसिस का, प्लीज वैलिडेट द हाइपोथेसिस बाय डूइंग योर ओन मार्केट रिसर्च. हाउ मच of similar products or technologies, how much value it generates. Today we can search everything online, right, as much as you want. And so first define the keywords for your research. Do like you do literature search for your inventions, do market research for your products. Get a basic sense of किस transaction values पे कौन सी तरह की companies ये ले सकती है, लेना चाहेगी, और उनसे you may be completely wrong, that's okay, but you have a starting point. So I'm sorry I could not give you a simple answer or an easy way out, but that's the only way to do it well. And of course, there are ecosystem players like us, Hiranmaya, the whole ecosystem which is there. But that would not mean no one can do your job. You need to know, because so a lot of times the problem and the issues we face with inventors is they come up with ideas and solutions which they think are solutions, jabki they are half-baked ideas most of the cases, right? Because they have not thought through.
यही चीज आकाश जी एक अभी नागराजन साहब के लीडरशिप में इस बार एक पॉलिसी लेवल पे काम कर रहे हैं. 1 लाख लोग थीसिस, प्रोजेक्ट्स और पीएचडी लिखते हैं गुजरात में, एमएससी, एमटेक, बीटेक में. तो हायर एजुकेशन डिपार्टमेंट इसी पे काम कर रहा है कि इस बार जो बच्चे थीसिस रिसर्च लेने वाले हैं उससे पहले रिगोरस स्क्रीनिंग करवाना है कि नोवेल्टी क्या है, यूटिलिटी क्या है, उनकी मार्केट वैल्यू क्या है, किसी के काम में आने वाला है कि नहीं आने वाला है. डिपार्टमेंट तो गाइडलाइन देगा, लेकिन यूनिवर्सिटी और इंस्टीट्यूशन को इसमें रस लेना होगा. वो लोग 2 लेयर 3 लेयर जब तक उसको डिफेंस को एनालिसिस नहीं करेंगे, ये सब 1% भी थीसिस इस देश में कभी प्रूफ ऑफ कंसेप्ट भी नहीं बनता है. प्रोडक्ट और सोल्यूशन तो भूल जाइए. तो अगर जब तक हम इनोवेशन इकोसिस्टम में जितना भी टॉप डाउन सपोर्ट दे रहे हैं, पैसा दे रहे हैं, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर दे रहे हैं, ये कोई काम का नहीं होगा अगर आप इन रिसर्च का नोवेल्टी नहीं बढ़ाओगे, क्योंकि अल्टीमेटली आपके सोल्यूशन किसी की यूज में नहीं जाने वाला है. तो इसी एरिया में अभी नागार्जुन साहब और उनकी टीम काम कर रहा है, ताकि हम ट्रैक करने वाले हैं एक पोर्टल के द्वारा हर एक यूनिवर्सिटी का रिसर्च सिनॉप्सिस जो सबमिशंस होता है कॉलेज लेवल पे, यूनिवर्सिटी लेवल पे, प्रॉपर मैकेनिज्म के द्वारा उसको रिव्यू किया जाएगा. और यहाँ कहीं ना कहीं डिजाइन थिंकिंग पैराडाइम आता है. डिजाइन थिंकिंग में 50% टाइम प्रॉब्लम को वैलिडेट करने में लगाई जाती है, लेकिन हायर एजुकेशन की रिसर्च में 5% टाइम भी हाइपोथेसिस बनाने में लगाते नहीं है, इसीलिए कभी सोल्यूशन बाहर निकलती नहीं है. तो ये फ्रेमवर्क को अभी नागार्जुन साहब ने, कमिश्नर ने लेटर लिखे हैं यूनिवर्सिटीज को कि भाई पेडागोजिक चेंजेस करो, आप ऐसे प्रोसेस बनाओ कि आप नोवेल्टी और यूटिलिटी के ऊपर फोकस करो। रिसर्च ऐसे भी एक साइकिल में सोल्यूशन नहीं बनता है, मुश्किल से 2-3 साइकिल आप रिसर्च कर लेंगे, 3 बैच की बच्चे पीएचडी कर लेंगे, लेकिन अगर हाइपोथेसिस ही गलत होगा तो कितना भी बैच के आप रिसर्च कर लो वो निकलता नहीं है। तो इस एरिया में तो काम कर रहे हैं। नागार्जुन सर कुछ कमेंट करेंगे?
हाँ, सो डिजाइन थिंकिंग में जो इम्पोर्टेंस है कि जल्दी से जल्दी लोग ये सिस्टमेटिक अप्रोच को अपनाएं और जो फैंसी फैक्टर है वो छोड़ के रियल इंपॉर्टेंट चीज है जो प्रॉब्लम को आइडेंटिफाई करने में, वैलिडेट करने में ज्यादा टाइम लगाए, ये इंपॉर्टेंस जल्दी समझ में आ जाए। इसलिए हम सभी कॉलेजेस में डिजाइन थिंकिंग को एक क्रेडिटेबल कोर्स में इंट्रोड्यूस करने के लिए भी पॉलिसी बनाया है और इस साल से यूनिवर्सिटीज को ऑलरेडी इन्फॉर्म भी किया है। आई थिंक दे विल फाइंड अ वे टू इंट्रोड्यूस दिस डिजाइन थिंकिंग। तो सब चीजें ये एक सिस्टमेटिक प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग से ही शुरू होता है, फिर उसको आइडिया वैलिडेशन से लेके फिर मार्केट वैलिडेशन तक हमको वैल्यू चेन में धीरे धीरे ऊपर जाना है।
थैंक यू सर। आकाश जी, एक इंटरेस्टिंग क्वेश्चन है, डॉक्टर हर्षल साहब पूछ रहे हैं, जो स्मॉल इनोवेशंस होते हैं, जो यूटिलिटी इनोवेशंस कह सकते हो, या जिसका थोड़ा सा आईपी वैल्यू कम होती है लेकिन रैपिड स्केल अप का अपॉर्चुनिटी रहता है, ऐसी चीजों में आप आईपी को फाइल करके कमर्शियलाइजेशन के प्रति ध्यान दें या जल्दी से जल्दी उनको कमर्शियलाइजेशन के स्केल करने में ध्यान दें? क्या सही है इन्वेंटर की पर्सपेक्टिव से?
मुझे बेसिकली मेरी साइड नेटवर्क की वजह से, कैन यू जस्ट क्विकली रिपीट द क्वेश्चन?
मैं ये कह रहा हूं कि हर्षल जी ये पूछ रहे हैं, डॉक्टर हर्षल साहब कह रहे हैं कि अगर इनोवेशन लो हैंगिंग फ्रूट है, मतलब लो डेप्थ ऑफ इनोवेशन है लेकिन हाई पॉसिबिलिटी ऑफ स्केल ऑफ डिफ्यूजन है, कोई जैसे कि आप मान लीजिए गुजरात में पतंग महोत्सव के टाइम पे सब बाइक में एक तार लगाते हैं ताकि रस्सी गला ना काट ले, उसमें इनोवेशन में हाई टेक्नोलॉजी नहीं है बट हाई यूटिलिटी है, जाने बच सकती है। तो ये पूछ रहे हैं कि ऐसी इनोवेशन जिसमें यूटिलिटी हाई हो, नोबिलिटी कम हो, तो उसको पेटेंट फाइल करने में ज्यादा बिजी रहे या उसको धंधा में लेने में जल्दी फायदा है?
इसका बड़ा रिसेंट एग्जांपल है, अगर आप सबने देखा होगा, सैनिटेशन टनल्स जो इतनी तेजी से पनप के आई है, राइट, जो अभी कोविड को प्रिवेंट करने के लिए डिफरेंट डिजाइन, जिसमें कोई इनोवेशन नहीं है, बेसिकली एक तार है, स्प्रिंकलर है, लेकिन जो जितनी तेजी से उसको इम्प्लीमेंट कर सकता है, विल हैव द रिसोर्सेस, विल हैव बेटर रिसोर्सेस, जो उसको सक्सेसफुली मार्केट में तेजी से लाता है। अल्टीमेटली इट्स ऑल अबाउट लॉन्चिंग द मार्केट, राइट, देन क्रिएटिंग, उस रिसोर्सेस से आप डिफरेंशिएशन क्रिएट कर पाएंगे इफ योर इनोवेटिव माइंडसेट है तो, क्योंकि इफ यू कैन नॉट ओवर इंजीनियर, दिस इज नॉट अ स्पेस प्रोग्राम, this is launching where you have to adequately engineer, you have to launch fast, launch dirty, and keep on innovating on the go. So ऐसे जहां threshold low है, वहां speed of execution is what makes a difference.
Wonderful. एक उत्सव अक्रूवाला पूछ रहे हैं, how to utilize the knowledge of abroad university or industry to apply our project, how to communicate with innovators, entrepreneurs who have some IP which are interest to us. कहाँ से पता चलेगा कि हमारे एरिया में काम करने वाले और भी इनोवेटर्स हैं?
सर ये तो मतलब दिस ओनली रिक्वायर्स योर रियल इंटरेस्ट। अगर आपको सही में इंटरेस्ट है ये फाइंड करने के लिए, नथिंग कैन स्टॉप यू एंड यू आर जस्ट अ गूगल अवे and a LinkedIn search. There are so many people who make amazing. I have personally made probably at least 100 plus connections, which I do really active millions of dollars worth of business with, which I have never, before doing business, I've never met first. Electronically, we have done it, you know. So that is something, and today, thanks to COVID now, all the more people will be open to being contacted electronically, right? So I think timing couldn't be better for you to identify. So if it's a scientific expert you are looking at, probably you sign up on academia.edu, you look at relevant journals and see who are the publishers, you look at Google Scholar, some of these electronic resources, web resources, or you will sign up on PLOS, you know, the public library of open science, right, the PLOS.org, जिसमें इतने अच्छे, अगर कोई एक्सपर्ट से, आप एक्सपर्ट से ही कनेक्ट करना चाहेंगे, या there is another organization called Association of University Technology Managers, AUTM, in the US, which is association of all major university technology licensing offices. आपको कोई यूनिवर्सिटी का नाम पता है जहां आपको जाना है, just go to the website. Most universities, at least in the US, Europe, you know, in even in Southeast Asia, China, a lot of them have their own websites and their technology licensing offices, or professors have their own. Even Indian, let's say IITs or Indian universities, उनके professors और researchers के आपको email ID बड़े आराम से मिल जाएंगे if you search enough, right? So I think that's the only way to go ahead, persist and persevere.
आपने एक इंटरेस्टिंग बात शुरू में कही थी और बहुत फेमस इंजीनियर्स और साइंटिस्ट की कॉपी बुक के जेरॉक्स दिखाया था, किस तरीके से वो सिस्टमैटिक डॉक्यूमेंट करते हैं। हमारे इनोवेटर की, रिसर्चर की एक बहुत बड़ी खूबी है कि हम करते ही नहीं है यहाँ पे। हमको लगता है जब जरूरत पड़ेगी तो जेरॉक्स मारेंगे।
We are culturally an oral tradition, no? So
हाँ, श्रुति कल्चर से आए हुए हैं हम लोग। एक सवाल उसी डायरेक्शन में है। जय पूछ रहे हैं, जय सुदानी कह रहे हैं कि बहुत सारे बच्चे काम करते हैं प्रोजेक्ट में, मल्टीपल बैचेस में काम करते हैं, तो क्या मैकेनिज्म डॉक्यूमेंटेशन रखे तो बाद में पता चला कि कौन सिग्निफिकेंट कंट्रीब्यूटर है, किसने क्या कंट्रीब्यूशन किया, उसको रिकॉर्ड कैसे करें?
So of course the old school way, it's a very important question, and it potentially again this will require hygiene. Like हम organization में जैसे हम research में काम बांटते हैं या कोई भी project में, how we divide based on one's skill. The simple answer to this is documentation. तो जैसे lab notebook बन रहा है तो there should be a common lab notebook with single editor जो अपना, single reviewer, and then someone who comes in and puts in their part, जिसको sign and check off किया जाए. That is the old school way. There are also what is called laboratory innovation management, laboratory information management system, LIMS, right? जिसके अंदर आप role based access दे सकते हैं, या document management systems होती हैं जिसमें आपने एक single document तैयार किया research का और everyday activity is been logged in. So this is nothing but a document and a project management system approach. So इसमें basically we have to show the rigor and diligence and the intent that we want to do this well and have clear demarcation of roles and responsibilities. और किसी ने कुछ भी, जो मैंने बताया, documentation अगर multiple teams है तो वो अपने सारे उसमें contribution और उसका proper, of course here comes in the good and the bad part. The good part of the human tendencies of overriding sometimes the natural rhythm, and the negative side of it is that you don't want to give someone the due credit. So if you have you have a system overriding capabilities, then but then ultimately, even if there are people who do it probably maximum 20% of the time, but 80% honesty will always prevail. So the best way is to have a good record management practice, which could be like you have a common laboratory notebook. Just to sum up, laboratory notebook in which different colors or different color coding or different sections or signature for the main lab head or the principal investigator, and then the others could be the other contributors could be made in. And the other approach is having a laboratory information management system tool or any freely available document management tool.
Thank you, sir. Towards the end of this wonderful session, आपने इतने सारे कमर्शलाइजेशन और वो सब के साथ क्लोजली देखे हैं। गुजरात की किसी यूनिवर्सिटी या एकेडमिक रिसर्च ऐसे कुछ उदाहरण आपकी नजर में हैं जो पार्टिसिपेंट्स के लिए बता सकते हैं?
So there are several. In fact, when we worked on this Research to Rupees program with GSBTM, और हम लोग एक प्रोग्राम कर रहे थे बायोटेक्नोप्रेन्योर, तो जिसमें से करीब 17 कंपनीज बन चुकी है, जिसमें it was a very interesting initiative which Skyquest has been knowledge was the initial idea and the knowledge partner, जिसमें फिर EDI, GVFL, काफी लोगों ने, ecosystem players ने इसमें रोल प्ले किया है. उसके अंदर basically there were researchers who were taken or people with technical ideas. They were married, or rather team उनकी बनाई गई with someone who comes with a commercial background, something, and then they will put across to investors. तो इस पूरी exercise में I think 4 या 5 साल चले हैं, जिसमें these were like weekend batches. और इस process में 17 companies have come out, which are today successful and they have been funded to different degrees. Of course, these were mostly in biotech, which includes one of them being a company called Axio Biotech, which is going to become acquired and invested in by few of the largest investment companies, and now is a US company with origin in Ahmedabad. This was into chitosan-based wound care dressing. So they started from initially Nirma Lab जो था, उनके बच्चों की शुरुआत आइडिया थी है. Nirma Lab was Madhubhai very before this, probably around in 2006 or something.
Yes, yes.
So,
So
this was one of the
example, Axiom Bioscience. You can go and refer their website. It's a very innovative company, funded by Gujarat Venture Finance Limited and others, doing wonderful high technology research into enterprises. Some people are asking any blog or book they could read to learn more about IP and IP commercialization. Would you like to refer?
So, like I said, probably I can write
in the chat box.
1 second to all the panelists and attendees. Search for AUTM and refer to Agni website of GOI. AUTM is USA, which is the University Technology Managers. Then you can refer to resources of LES, which is license.
Our host will post these things in our Facebook Live also, so that all the people who are watching through Facebook can refer them.
Licensing Executive Society. So you can refer some of these resources, or there is also Global Innovation Exchange, which is funded by government of United States Department of State, US government, Global Innovation Exchange. These are some of the free resources which has enough links within itself to basically explore